Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast. Each episode, I bring you amazing women who inspire, educate, and share their experiences and journeys along the way. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's relax and have some fun hearing what can be accomplished after 55. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Living Ageless and Bold. My guest today is Stacey Levy, and she is the founder and CEO of Ellie's Army. And I asked her to be on the podcast and then was like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, because she lost her daughter at my daughter's age now. And if you're a mom, this is going to be a powerful conversation. But I have to say, when I did my research and I looked at everything about what you're doing, Stacey, and watching the videos of Ellie, and I can still hear her laugh. What an amazing human. So I just want to talk about her and you and everything that you're doing. And thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about Ellie. She was born with cystic fibrosis.
Yes.
Let's talk about CF, because
Okay.
I've heard of it, but you're the
Right.
first person I'm connected with now that
Yes.
I want to learn about it.
And that's exactly what happened when we found out that she had cystic fibrosis. It was something that I had heard of, but I had no idea what it was and what the implications were going to be for our daughter. CF is a genetic disease. It primarily affects the lungs, but it also, it's a disease that affects the way that the mucus in the body is made. So it's very thick everywhere that there's mucus, which causes infections and blockages. But the lungs are primarily the issue that kids and young adults have, that end up, making it a terminal disease.
So it's interesting you said that you were surprised as well. So I think about, women our age, we grow up and you have this fantasy, we're going to get married, we're going to have kids, and we're going to live happily ever after. And this happened. Was Ellie your first child?
Yes, she was.
Okay.
She was. And that is exactly how it was. I had always wanted to have a big family, and I was so excited. And, like you said, you just have this idea of what life is going to be like. And then in a moment, all of that is shattered. And, you have to reevaluate and, after the shock, come to terms, and it's a process, and you learn to deal with it and manage it, and you just keep moving forward through all of the stuff that goes on as a mother.
And as I read about Ellie and watched, what an incredible, she was funny and talented. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize she was the one singing.
Yes.
I thought maybe. And then, so talk about, obviously, I'm sure she went through a lot with that, but she had an incredibly optimistic personality and attitude towards this.
She did.
Which comes from her parents, I'm sure. But let's talk about what life was like when Ellie was little, and how you raised this incredible woman.
Well, I think that part of it is the way that you raise a child, but your children just end up like coming to this world with their own characteristics and strengths. And Ellie was a tough kid, inherently, and she was an old soul. You felt that when you were with her. And I raised her to be tough. I knew that she was going to have to fight. It backfired on me when she was a teenager as a mother, because she was tough. But it served her. And you think that you're here to teach your children. And I've learned over the years that Ellie had so much to teach me. And when she passed away is when I really, really felt the impact of her lessons, because she really had laid out the roadmap for me to deal with grief. And so I, always try to refer to her and think, how would Ellie do it? She had a really amazing ability to always have fun, and she was optimistic. She was realistic, but she was a fighter, and she knew because of her illness that there was a good chance that she wasn't going to be here and live a normal lifespan. So she packed in as much as she could and really made the most out of her life. And she accomplished so much, and she lived in the moment, and she taught me. She taught a lot of people. She taught a lot of people how to do it, and I'm very proud of her.
Well, I watched the interview with her doctor, and that was very telling, the impact that she had on him. And to this day, do you want to tell such a funny story about the yellow socks?
Yes. So at the end of Ellie's life, she had 2 double lung transplants back to back. Lung transplants are really the way that most cystic fibrosis patients that have end of life lung disease, they have a lung transplant to try to help to prolong their life. And Ellie had one, and it went okay, and then within a week her new lungs went bad, and they had to put her on life support, and she remained on that for a month until they were able to find new lungs again. And throughout all of that, she really had shown such an incredible will to live. And the doctors always said she did everything that we asked, and she did it, and it wasn't easy, but she really wanted to live. And one of the things that they always told her was she had to walk to get well, and walks were everything. And her surgeon, who, believe it or not, we still have a wonderful relationship with him. His family's come and stayed with us for 2 weeks. They've become very important to us. He told her that he wanted to see dirty socks because that would prove that she had been walking. And so one day she gave gave him her socks, and I was on a Zoom call with him, and I saw behind his desk, I saw those socks hanging up on the bulletin board behind him. So he said he was going to keep them, with him forever, because she inspired him so much.
Yeah, and it sounded like everyone in the hospital, that the nurses, and she was just a big light.
And that was, one of the lessons that I learned from her. She spent a lot of time in the hospital growing up, and wherever she wasn't always saying, I got to get out of here. Like, I want to go home. Wherever Ellie was, that's where she made her life. And she tried to enjoy her life there. So, that's why I have this relationship with the doctor, because Ellie made really meaningful relationships with all of the people that cared for her. And, and she taught, that's where I learned that no matter what's going on and no matter how dark things can feel, you can still experience joy. And life can, there's always something to be grateful for. And, that sustained me through all of the time that we spent with her growing up and going through this awful disease. And it, like I said, it really has helped me to in my grief process, because I know, like, I have a responsibility to honor Ellie and her life by being okay and trying to be happy regardless of what is going on and what pain I'm in. And that's what she taught me. And it's working. It doesn't always work. I'm not as good at it as she was, but it's become like a mantra to me, to carry on that way.
What was her childhood like? What was your life like too as a mom, having a child with an illness like this?
Well, it started out very scary. What happens with kids with CF is that they get sick, and something that would just be like a common cold to somebody becomes, a bacterial infection that starts deteriorating her lungs. So it was a constant challenge, and I was very afraid in the beginning. And I tried to control everything until at some point I realized that I couldn't, you know.
Until she became a teenager and that
Oh
tough
yeah.
cookie that you raised.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. Uh, um, but yeah, I did. I tried to control everything, and at some point I learned that you had to let it go, and that, I don't make the choices. I can only do the best that I can in any given circumstance, and just put one foot in front of the other and do the best that I can. And so emotionally, things got easier as she got older, and we were able to, look at things more from that perspective. But Ellie had a great childhood. We used to live in New York, and we would come down to Florida for the winters because we felt that it was healthier for her to be outside rather than like inside with everybody with germs and getting sick and stuff. So we spent our winters at this really wonderful little hotel in Bal Harbor, Florida, called the Seaview Hotel. And it was a very special place. There were a lot of really interesting and like consequential people that lived there, that owned apartments in the hotel, a lot of politicians and business people. And these were Ellie's friends. And she thrived. She swam, every day, and I, gave her lessons. When she became a teenager, she stopped swimming because I ruined it for her because I pushed it so much on her. But she was healthy, and she really enjoyed her life. And I always said, you got to look for the perks in situations. Like there were perks for cystic fibrosis. If she didn't have CF, we wouldn't have been spending our winters in Florida. If she didn't have CF, we wouldn't have had a wheelchair to go through security and get through faster. Even when she didn't need the wheelchair, we always said, you could have it, you earned it. So, like I always felt like we needed to look at any given situation, not just with what, comes with it that's challenging, but what we can be grateful for in that situation.
And that sounds like Ellie, like in the
Yeah.
things that I watched. And so she went to high school, she went to college.
I actually started homeschooling her when she was in 7th grade. She went to school. She loved school, but there are a lot of treatments, breathing machines, physical therapy that's involved, with a child that has CF. And so it was very demanding. The school that she went to Miami Country Day School. It was a rigorous academic program, but they allowed her to continue to take one class every semester so that she still remained involved with school. She still had her friends. She went to homecoming and, she did all of that. So that was really amazing. But yeah, so I homeschooled her. When she got older, I hired a tutor, because I wasn't capable.
I was going to say, you couldn't pull that off, Mom? I
There
said,
was a
thank goodness.
period of time where Ellie didn't want to do any work. She just refused to do work, and I would scream at her all day long. Finally, I said, "You know what, Ellie? You want to be stupid? Don't do any work." And then when it became her own, she started to study. She ended up being really successful. She went to college and became a philosophy major.
Yeah.
She developed a class.
I was just going to ask you about that. I want to
Yeah,
talk about that.
yeah. She wrote a course called The Philosophy of Death and Dying, and she helped teach it. She was published a couple of times. She was very, very bright. And I told her it's because of my homeschooling. And she goes,
Yeah,
"That's what it was, Mom. It was your
of
homeschooling."
course. But such an amazing, like I said, I keep saying, but to do that in college, to create this course, which I think of the people, now who were in that class back
Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah,
probably life-changing for them.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, she
What
was
is
very
the
motivated to accomplish. She wanted to do as much as she could while she was here. And
what
so
what is the life expectancy of CF? Did you know she was going to be in her early 20s or
when she was born, they said that half of the children lived to be 18, which meant that the other half did not. CF has changed dramatically, especially since Ellie passed away. They've come out with new medications. People are living into their 30s, 40s, 50s. So it's really amazing, how far they've come. And I'm really happy because I still see through our foundation a lot of families that are dealing with CF, and um, I'm happy to tell them that the trajectory of the disease is so different from when Ellie had it, and there's a lot of reason for them to have hope.
well, and let's talk about Ellie's Army. Obviously you wanted to do this for Ellie, but you do have some background that helped you create this amazing foundation. I just love what you're doing
Oh,
for
thank you so much.
families who are like
Thank
yours.
you.
So let's talk about the foundation
Sure,
and the
sure.
hows and the whys and just everything you're doing.
Well, I always was involved with nonprofits because I was a social worker. That's what I have my degree in. And I was a psychiatric social worker initially. Um, and I gave that up. I don't know if I would have returned to work as a mother, but once Ellie was sick, I really had no choice. And I had to stay home with her to take care of her. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. That's, one of the problems that a lot of the families that we help have is that, they're unable to work, or they miss a lot of work, or, we were very blessed. And when Ellie was born, we went to a support group, and there was a bunch of parents, and I was hearing like these horrible stories about what these people were going through. And it was so sad and depressing and scary that when we left, I looked at my husband and we said, "We're never going back there again." So we connected with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and we had our first fundraiser when Ellie was 6 months old. And we decided that, you know, we were going to try to we were going to try to take the path of making the situation better. Like, what can we do to help find a cure for this disease and for our daughter? And we became very involved with fundraising, I was on the board of the New York chapter of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and we really rallied a lot of people and raised a lot of money. When Ellie
So,
was
so
around,
I was just going to say, you could single-handedly be one of the reasons that the life expectancy is now going into 30s and 40s, that you started right away,
yeah, we
and
did, we did, we
that's
did,
amazing.
yeah, and because I feel like, well, what are we going to do about it,
Right.
and um, so fast forward when we moved down to Florida permanently, Ellie started to get sick and spend a lot of time in the hospitals. And we began to meet a lot of families who had children living with life threatening illnesses that were struggling financially because of their child's disease. And so we started a foundation back in 2001. It was called the Reach for the Stars Foundation, and we helped families with children with cystic fibrosis, um, and young adults. And we did that for quite some time. We were doing great. My husband's business is football, and it was a coincidence that a very dear family friend became the quarterback of the Dolphins at the same time. And my husband, Brian, was his agent. And we started the Reach for the Stars Foundation with him. And we really were able to help a lot of people. But as Ellie got sicker, it was harder for us to devote as much time to the foundation. We always helped people, but it really, we weren't actively fundraising. And then in 2014 was when Ellie had her transplants. And there was a girl in the hospital who had cystic fibrosis. And at Duke Medical Center, where Ellie had her transplants, and a lot of different transplant programs in the country, they require that you have a certain amount of money that you could access in order to be accepted into their transplant programs.
Why
Um,
is that? Wow, I've never heard that before.
Yeah. At Duke, it was about $15,000.
Wow.
The reason is, and it sounds awful, and for some people it really is, but the truth is that, there are only so many organs. And they want to make sure that whoever they transplant, it's going to be successful. And there are a lot of financial requirements to having a transplant. And a lot of it is about relocating. We had to live in North Carolina. She had originally been on the transplant list at Columbia Presbyterian. So we had gotten her an apartment in New York that we lived in with her. Then we had to get her to Duke because they weren't getting the organs, and she wouldn't have lived if we waited at Columbia. So we transferred to Duke. We had to get another apartment. It's a very costly process. And there was this girl, and she didn't have the money to get a transplant, to be accepted into the program. And Ellie looked at me, and she didn't say to me, Mom, can we help her? Is there something we could do? Ellie said, what are you going to do about it? And so it ended up that the finances weren't the only reason why this woman wasn't able to get the transplants, but that was Ellie. And she had stated when she was going through her transplants that when it was all over, she wanted to come back and start up the foundation again. And, obviously that wasn't possible. When she passed away, it was around the same time that my son was in his later years in high school. And eventually he went off to college. And, like we talk about reinventing ourselves, all of a sudden, you know, I had always been Ellie's mother. I had been my son Everett's mother also, which was wonderful, but not nearly as taxing as it was to take care of Ellie. And this was my identity. It was all wrapped up in that. And, I remember I had done a fundraiser after she passed away, and I explained in my when I was speaking, how, like, when a doctor would come into the room, I would say, "Hi, I'm Ellie's mother. I'm Stacey Levy. I'm Ellie's mother." And all of a sudden, that was gone. And, like, like, what was going to become of me? And so I really had to figure out what I was going to do, because staying in bed with the covers pulled over my head was not an option.
Well, and you had a son too.
Yes,
Like
yes,
there was this person who lived his whole life
yes,
with you all,
yes,
working with Ellie, doing everything you could
yes.
to
Yeah,
keep her as long as you could, but you still
yeah.
had him.
And it was very difficult for him, although, we were all in it together. It was a
Yeah.
family fight, and we all had our roles, and Everett knew what was required of him. I never heard him complain. I never heard him say, "You do this for Ellie." He knew what he needed to do as a brother of a sick, sister. And so,
How afraid were you to have another baby?
that was a whole other process,
Yeah.
because, like I said, I wanted to have a big family.
Yeah.
And at the time, we actually even tried an in vitro procedure, which back in the early 90s was an experimental procedure. They do it all the time now. Um, it's where they test the embryo. They remove a cell from the embryo and then only insert healthy embryos. We did it 3 times. I didn't get pregnant. I don't know why. Maybe it was nerves, but we ended up having Everett naturally, and thankfully he was healthy. There's a 1 in 4 chance of having a child with cystic fibrosis. There's a one in there's 2 in 4 chance that the child will be a carrier, and then there's the other one chance that they'll have no CF in their genes at all, and both parents have to be carriers in order for a child to be affected.
So
So
Everett's fine.
Everett's a carrier.
Oh,
So
he
he
is a
just
carrier.
needs, yeah, he needs to be, it's symptomless. He just needs to hope that when he gets married, the other person isn't a carrier. But we'll deal with that eventually.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so I decided to start up Ellie's Army again. I mean, start up the foundation again, change the name to Ellie's Army to honor her memory. And we opened up our mission statement to include families with all life-threatening children and young adults with all life-threatening illnesses, not just cystic fibrosis, because it's across the board. Once your child has a diagnosis that's critical, it's financially, emotionally, physically, on so many levels. It's so difficult. And, I feel like, it's hard enough. I know what it's like, the emotional highs and lows, and what it's like to physically have to take care of a child that requires so much care. But financially, I mean, a lot of these families, because they can't work or because of their child's medical bills, they're unable to pay their rent or mortgage. And they come to us and they could be losing their home. We've recently helped a family of 6 that was living in their car. Um, and we really try to help these families financially get back on their feet. I think that what makes us a little different is we don't just put a Band-Aid on the situation. We don't make a $500 or pay a month's rent. We really look at their financial situation and try to figure out how we could really help them to move forward and so we could pay a few months rent, or somebody can come to us for rent. We might end up giving them 4 months rent and see that their credit card bill has been maxed out to the point where they can only pay interest. So we'll clean out their debt. Like, we really try to help these families so that they could just focus on their child and enjoy quality time with their child and not have to worry about whether the electric is going to go off, or if they're going to be able to give their child a particular medication.
Yeah, it's such an incredible organization. How do you
Thank you.
decide? I know you don't just help South Florida
No,
families.
we help families all over the country.
Yeah.
And we have like a very comprehensive application process, which is tough for families when you're going through so much with your child to get your hands on all this financial information. And, it's hard. We really try to help walk them through that. But, as long as they meet the criteria, we help them, and we're really able to vet them. We've had 2 people try to come to us that really didn't have a child with an illness. But
Oh,
because
that
of
must
our process,
infuriate you.
I know, it's just unbelievable if you think about it. But we were able to catch it because we do have because of our process. And, we help people until we don't have any money to do it anymore, until it's, in our budget. And, there have been a couple of years where we've, had to stop taking applications. And I'm really hoping that we won't have to do that again. It's really hard to do that.
How can people get involved with Ellie's Army?
Well, you can go and check us out at our website. It's elliesarmy.org, ELLIES.org. Reach out to me. I would love for people to join our army, and we really have a great army. People are very dedicated, and, we have a lot of people that have been involved for a long time and really, want to be involved in the work. And I'm so grateful for that. One of the best things is being able to meet people that want to help others and be a part of 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 them being able to do that, and feeling good about it, so reach out to us. We have a big event in February. It's called the Dirty Socks 5K Run and Walkathon
Oh,
because
right.
of the Dirty Socks story that we spoke about earlier. And we have, it's a great day here in South Florida. Yeah, and donate, you know,
Yeah, and if you
donate.
know anybody who needs help, make sure that
Absolutely.
they learn about
Absolutely. Yes,
Ellie's Army.
reach out to us.
Yeah,
We
share
have
this
an
episode with
application on,
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
always looking for ways to get in touch with people who need help through hospitals, and even through Google and social media. People are finding us. So that's really good.
that's great. So I wrap up every episode with the same 2 questions. What is the greatest thing you've accomplished since you turned 50?
Huh. I think it is the way that I was able to be the parent that I was able to become, particularly at the end of Ellie's life, and for my son. You grow up with your first child, and we went through it, and you always can look back and see where you would have liked to have done things differently. At the end of Ellie's life, I was present. I stepped up to the plate. I was able to give her everything she needed. My husband and I had 2 separate roles. Ellie would have cravings in the hospital. So when Brian was with her, she would want soup from the Chinese restaurant, a pomegranate iced tea from Starbucks, like wings from Hooters, like for one meal. And I used to say, pick a place. And then the flip side was when there was a medical emergency, Ellie would say to her father, we need mom. This is above your pay grade. So rather than her wanting Brian there when to give her all of the stuff that she wanted. At the end of her life, I was able to do all of it. And I was able to, I was running around to all the different places for her. She didn't have anything left, so I feel really good about that.
I was going to say that should give
the way that I mothered my son as well.
That should give you some peace.
Yes,
it
absolutely.
Really should.
Yes.
It really should.
And gratitude. Yes.
And then where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Well, I still have hopes for that big family. I tell my son all the time, find somebody, have grandchildren. Yeah. I just hope to be continuing to, help people in some capacity, enjoy my life with my husband, hopefully we'll be in good health and, just a more relaxed kind of a life, but one that still is fulfilling.
Well, congratulations on everything that you did. When you all check out the website, Ellie's Army, I want you to watch the video in the about and you'll see her when she's a little girl telling her story and all the way through. And just, like I said, I can still hear her laughing and it's pretty powerful. So you raised an amazing young woman.
Thank you.
Sorry for your loss. And
thank you.
But thank you for all the people that you're helping.
Thank you.
So again, this episode, if you know anybody, share this with them, share the foundation information, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much, Christina, for having me.
Thank you for listening or for watching this episode of Living Ageless and Bold. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit subscribe. And if you like the episode, I hope that you will give us a great review. You can also head over to livingagelessandbold.com and sign up for information, inspiration, and exclusive opportunities for us, women over 55. Thanks for listening. And remember, no matter what you do, keep living ageless and bold.